All right, guys. Hello, I'm Jamear J, and right now I am sitting down with a very special gentleman here, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, and we'll go from there.
All right, I'm D. Loreg Lee. I am a grief recovery specialist, and I deal with grievers. So yeah.
Okay, well, that's a great way to start. Is just put it all out there.
Right.
But let's just hop right in. I just want to know, and this is a personal question, like, how has your line of work, the dynamic of it, how has it changed since the pandemic? Because I'm sure a lot of people maybe are grieving about reasons that they probably wouldn't have been grieving about previously before, the pandemic.
Absolutely.
How has things changed with your advice and how you handle things?
I think a lot of times with the pandemic, it forced people to actually deal with themselves, to actually look at themselves. They no longer were allowed to simply be busy. So busy could have been just going to work, going to school, participating in different activities. So, their minds were not set on what's going on in my life or the inner self. So I think when the pandemic happened, it forced people to actually take an inward look. It quieted their minds down. But for some people, it forced them to, head in directions of alcoholism, abuse, things of that nature. But for people that really wanted help, they reached out and got the help they needed. Myself and another colleague through our church, we did a grief loss and recovery course during the pandemic, and it really helped people to actually talk about what they're going through, how the pandemic actually affected their lives. And we feel like it really benefited those people. I'm
sure it did, because I know, like I said, we've really had to face things head on during this pandemic, as you mentioned. So Absolutely. I know it probably has brought in a lot of feelings that people haven't felt before, if you will. Okay, so let's talk about sudden death, because I will say here at the Mental Health Summit, we're actually dealing with losing a great friend and a former mentor for us here. And it was so sudden. So how can you give advice to someone that's dealing with sudden death, or, something that just came out of nowhere during the pandemic?
Absolutely. When a person deals with sudden death, number one, it's a very sad moment. It's a somber moment, because you didn't think that this person that you looked at or been around for so long, that they were going to pass away. So I think, first thing is actually being honest about your feelings. Being honest about the relationship that you have with this person. I think it's about really looking at how precious every moment is. And I think sometimes, we learn how to grieve based off of our environments dealing with at home. So grieving and loss is how we grieve growing up. So for some people, they may not want to talk about the loss of this person, or they may want to kind of just distract themselves. So I think the first thing is actually grieve the person that you lost, and think about the relationship. Was it a loving relationship? Was it a relationship that benefited both of you? And actually talk about it. A lot of times as grievers, we don't want to talk about our loss or the people that we lose, because it hurts so much. It's really about recognizing the fact of the loss. See, grieving is not it's not a head issue. For me,
tell me more.
For me, I don't think grieving or loss is a head issue. It's a heart issue. Your heart is broken. You miss the person. So even though our hearts are broken, we try to fix grievers, or we try to fix our grief through our minds. And that's the wrong way to do it. The way that we need to do it is actually deal with the heart first, and then allow the mind to come along with it. So if we lead with our hearts, then our minds are actually falling, instead of following our minds and then trying to fix our heart with our minds. It's like, you like to paint? You ever painted a room?
Yeah, I'll paint a room.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I said, hey, let's go ahead and paint this room, whatever color. What's your favorite color?
Pink.
So we're gonna paint the room pink. So I'm gonna come with the paint, I'm coming with all the tools, but I say, instead of us using paintbrushes, I'm gonna give you a saw or a hammer. How's that room gonna look?
A hot mess.
A hot mess. And absolutely, and that's what happens with grievers. Grievers have the wrong tools to grieve. And so instead of us, we have to give grievers the right tools and the right words, the emotional words, the right responses to help them along with their grieving moment.
Wow, that was a great way to explain it and break it down. I've never heard it like that. I like that. And you mentioned something that I kind of want to touch back on. You mentioned with grieving and losing someone, it doesn't necessarily always have to be with death. So what range does grief span to, I guess, with your job? Like, what all do you deal with other than just death?
Well, there's over 40 different types of losses that have been recognized.
Wow.
Whether it is divorce, or it may be moving, or it may be, a loss of a pet, or it could be just a loss of trust. It could be a loss of finances. It could be a loss of whatever. So it stretches along those tangible and intangible losses. But sometimes we don't look at a loss of trust or a loss of faith as a grieving moment. So, and those are the things that we have to really be cognizant of.
Wow.
So that we are able to do better. So, yeah.
I'm learning so much right now. It's not that I didn't expect to, but yeah, like I'm really hearing some things that I've never heard before. So thank you so much for educating me as well.
No problem. Thank you.
And let's talk about the comeback. So the theme for this year's Mental Health Summit is the comeback. We're coming back from the pandemic, coming back strong. So I have to ask you, for people that's maybe lost someone during this pandemic, or like in terms of grieving, maybe they're grieving something and they're trying to get back to their old life, whether they like previously riding bikes or something, and maybe their friends are not there to do it with them, or whatever the case may be. What advice can you give to people trying to get back and come back strong when it's a little different?
Well, I think the first thing is to actually be transparent. So transparency and being authentic with the loss, meaning talk about it. A lot of times we want to hold in our grief, or hold in not talking about the loss. So we have to actually have a conversation about it. Being okay, not being okay. I think that is an important step for people to do. As far as getting back to some type of normalcy. I think the second one is to just simply walk towards forgiveness, because every relationship is unique.
That's a big one.
So that means that every grievous relationship is unique. I lost my mother probably like over 20 years ago. But if somebody else loses their mother, it's a different relationship. Where I lost my mother, somebody else lost their mother, that's where the relationship ends, or the similarities end, because relationships are different.
Right.
So if a person's actually walking towards forgiveness of that person, that helps in the normalcy, I feel. Helps in the normalcy, because you have to be real about the relationship. So was it a great relationship? Was it not a great relationship? And you have to look at those things. And I think the last thing is to get back to some type of normalcy is actually write down what you're feeling. As I said earlier, we don't have the emotional vocabulary to actually say how we feel. So if it may come down to just simply day by day, it might just be one sentence. For instance, it might just be simply, Mom, I miss you. And if that's the only thing that you can get out, let that be okay. The next day or the next moment, next week, whenever, it might be, I miss you so much. I'm proud of the relationship that we had. And as day by day, you continue to build more and more off of that. And normalcy grief is normal, and it's a natural reaction to any loss of any kind. So, and I think we have to understand that grief is normal. We're not taught how to lose something. We're taught how to gain. And get the new car, get a new job, get everything else, but we're never taught how to handle a loss. And so that's what I try to do in helping grievers come along.
Okay. And I know we're going to have to probably wrap this up, but I did have one more question. So the people at home who feel like they may not have anyone to talk to, they may feel alone, or, things like that. Is there any advice you can give them, or any ways that they can help, like, deal with or cope with things in a healthy manner? Or any advice?
One of the things is, the best way is to watch how you, I guess I would call them stirs, which are short-term energy relieving behaviors. I think watching how much you drink. It's nothing wrong with having a drink, going out, having fun with your girls or anything, or having fun with the fellas, or going out and getting something to eat. It's the excessiveness of that. And so watching how much you do a certain activity, and it might just be simply being on your phone. You know, I know we're all digital and everything. Nothing wrong being on the phone. Nothing wrong talking on Facebook or Instagram. But it's the excessiveness. Are you just simply trying to distract yourself from what you're grieving? And I think recognizing those signs and symptoms helps a person along and will help you along to actually healing at the end of the day.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Mr. D. I really appreciate it. I learned so much, so I know people at home probably did as well.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you guys later.